Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this Timeline Astrology podcast. My guest Kishori and I talk all about Rahu in Leo. So we're moving back through the signs with Rahu as it moves backwards, and we're really getting to the heart of the matter now in the sign Leo and exploring the fun, the majesty, the power of Rahu in this sign. So I hope you enjoy. We're reaching the end of our journey with Rahu. So we have another few signs. We have Cancer, then Gemini, and finishing up in Taurus, where Rahu is said to be exalted. So I hope you enjoy this. And without further ado, here's Kishori. So welcome, Kishori.
Yes, thank you. Yes, it's lovely to be here. I was just gathering my thoughts about what, from my mind point of view, what Rahu in Leo was about. I'm feeling it all, as always, but I have to come back to thinking, well, I better ask Gary what that's about first.
Well,
That's my usual dizzy state. Anyway, go on.
Well, I could ask you, and I don't know if you would like to share yourself about your own astrology.
I don't,
Do you recall where your Rahu is in your birth chart?
wait, I've got to switch to a different modality to look at a memory. So
the hint is in the question and the topic today.
yes, I know it has. I know that Rahu in Leo has something very much to do with me, but what that actually is to put into words, I don't know. I mean, I don't know in my conscious mind. I do know because I always know, but there are different. I was just pondering on the different ways of grasping information from that state that we call. You can call it your inner beloved. You can call it your guides. You can call it your guardian angel. You can talk about it as Tinkerbell, my fairy godmother. All sorts of ways of describing that inner link, bridge, if you like, between the different modalities. And it depends on your background. You know, if you're brought up Christian, you have guardian angels. But there are so many, or the Divine Mother, you could call it, so many ways of describing that. And then I was thinking, because we're going to be talking about Rahu embodiment later today in the Rahu book club, the book club.
Yes.
So yeah, Rahu, the beloved guide. I saw it this morning. I'm looking as a lioness going to her little cubs as they go the wrong way, and she's giving them a good old clout. Don't go that way, don't go there. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's a bit like that. So you could say the Divine Mother or Kali Ma as a guide rather than something to be terrified of, which some people do. So if we can think of all interference or all import or all guidance, especially the guidance from signals in the body, our archaeological system, or our inner child, so many ways of describing that. And I'm looking specifically today at Rahu, the guide, the Rahu, the lover beyond compare, the one who just wants to make life amazing for you. And it may not look like being clouted over the head by your Divine Mother. It may not look like it, but it is. So that's what I was meditating or flowing through my mind as I was getting ready, and the ordinary things like making cups of tea, and I was just thinking about it all. So yes.
Well, it's just fascinating how you are describing Rahu and Leo by saying that, even if you think about the symbol, of course, of Leo is the lion.
Yes, exactly. So I'm saying I have ways of knowing that I do know, but finding the words to put it into a linear thread that can be understood by mind, that takes a while. So I give you a selection of my inner awarenesses.
Yeah, that image of the lioness and her cubs, I think, and when you think about Leo as well, it's ruled by this notion that planets rule signs. You know, they have domains over certain signs.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
ruled by the sun.
Mm,
So it's that
that's what
so
I was thinking of. Yes, talking yesterday about the precious gift we have of that inner heart star. That I love that image. Well, it's not an image; it's an experience. It's a reality in my inner constellation, if you like. And what I was talking to some ladies in a group I was running yesterday about that real precious treasure, polishing your diamond, you know. And so, yeah, it is the inner star, the inner sun, really. Anyway.
that inner star for me, it's probably one of the more powerful, personally for me, images that you've given me, because it's like normally I kind of, you know, this notion of as well that it's in our darkest times that we find our light. You know, it sounds trivial and trite and all that, but it's true. It's like we're looking for that source of light. It's like if everything were light, then where's the source? You can see the source.
What you have to do is see, what did I write yesterday? That, yes, we think of something like Rahu, perhaps, as something not wanted, but actually, that particular situation to be feared, perhaps, or avoided, is in fact love. You know, I was thinking about the Great Way. Great Way is not difficult for those who have no preferences, and we were talking about it. And it's impossible not to have preferences at the human level, at the everyday 3D level. But actually, when you don't energize them with emotion, then everything is a guidance system. Everything is an expression. And if everything is an expression, it's that it's saying, look, you've got a little distortion, you tweak it this way and tweak it that way. And because what Rahu I see is so important in this time of being very, very precise. Like Jesus said, that in the end times you have to be innocent as doves and as wily or cunning as serpents. And it's that absolute precision, get that union of opposites into simplicity, into oneness. And you don't have to look at how to. How to is always in the allowing, intention and allowing, because you can't make it happen. How can you put water and, you know, ice and fire together, because they cancel each other out? But then it becomes that simplicity. And I see Rahu is the same. And that little twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are in the outer sky. I used to look at that and wonder so much as a child. And I see it was there all the time. It was my reflection of my inner guide. Mm.
It's so powerful because for me, it's like, you know, it kind of focuses you. It's that precision on the one hand, it's like that twinkle, twinkle, little star, and you really hone in on it. But then you, like you say, expand on it. I just think it's so powerful.
Exactly, because what is a star? But I mean, we can look at the little twinkle on, you know, shining above the manger in Bethlehem, or our own pole star. But actually, when you get there, it's a blazing nuclear fusion.
Mm.
I was looking up, and I'm actually engaged in exploring a little bit more some very precise astronomical details and the frequencies of the heart and the frequencies of the brain. And just so that when I begin a talk, I've got something a bit more in my mind. I mean, I can say, yes, one being says, or one research says 5,000 times, and electromagnetically, and looking at the electrical charges, and then just for fun to, you know, it isn't important, yet it's somehow I'm feeling very drawn to become more and more precise about the reflections, you know, the hermetic principles as above, below. And I'm really looking to get very, very precise, at least at what the scientists say, the different frequencies. And it's just such fun.
It's fascinating to me. Every time we speak, you know, you come up with these, you're dwelling on these kinds of things and these images that are just so apt for the sign that we're going to discuss, which is amazing. So maybe I should just explain, first of all.
Yes.
Written down a few. So you mentioned there about the ice and fire coming together. I mean, that you could literally express that, ice and fire, Rahu in Leo, in 2 words, ice and fire. Do you know what I mean? We could say it in different ways, but then electrical charges. It's like Rahu obviously intensifies everything, but the sun, Leo, is all that charge. It's that spark, that star. It's the sun is literally our star in our solar system,
Yeah.
and then about reflections, and it's like the sun is the light, but like that saying, I think it was a quote from Carl Jung, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow.
Highest of high and lowest of low. The first words that Hermes, when I first met him as an inner figure, that's what he said to me. And I asked him who he was.
That's Rahu and Leo in a nutshell. The highest of highs, the lowest of lows. It's like just the extremes, I suppose, like the ice and fire. And and this whole thing of the self, like, because in astrology, the sun is reflective of the self. But what is the self when you go searching for it, really? You know what I mean? It's there's many different definitions of what the self is. But with Rahu and Leo, that can, like the shadow, like the eclipse, actually, not just the shadow being cast by the sun, but the eclipse creates this perhaps other self, or some people in astrology refer to it as a false self, a shadow self, an egoic self.
Yes, as if imagining it could be, I don't know, not, it could be a knot. There aren't any knots. I mean, there aren't any, not this, it's all the story. There's nothing to be left out, the egoic self. It sounds so judgmental. That's what it is. And the Great Way says, make the smallest distinction, and heaven and earth are set forever apart. You have to say, it's all the story. Even, as Jesus said at the end, even the threshold of what we call death we have an idea that death means the end, but it's not. There isn't. It's just a different, it's post-puberty, if you like.
When you think about the distinction you're talking about, it's like, I was reading somewhere recently, it's the reminder of, when you're doing something and then you become aware that you're doing something, you're no longer the thing, you're no longer absorbed in that thing. It's like, I'm aware that I'm doing something. It's like that distinction.
Like I'm watching myself living. Knowing that I'm here, fully engaged, laughing and enjoying this. Oh, it's going to be fun having a chat with Gary, because it's part of my entertainment. And yet it's not. I'm also watching myself doing it. And sometimes when you say to me, what I'm saying is actually on track, of course, because I am the living intelligence, or I'm the living sun, I often say it's living alchemy. We're all engaged in a process of living alchemy, constantly transforming and reforming, and constantly, like the waves of the ocean. That's what we are. Amazing.
I just think as well that the heart field, when we talk about the heart now, because in astrology, Cancer, the sign Cancer and Leo both represent the heart according to Indian tradition. But I think it's different aspects in many ways. If you, even anatomically, Cancer is the chest, the lungs, of course, where the heart, literal physical heart, is nestled into. But then Leo is more deeper down into the solar plexus, obviously the solar plexus.
Yes.
So it's more the stomach, but also the heart. It's more, I think it would be more, both could be reflective of the heart feel you speak about, but I think Leo could be more because it's that sense of self, the sun, which is, the clarity, the oneness, but then the moon, which is Cancer, is like the reflection of that. The moon, the mind, the emotions, the likes and dislikes, the duality of the mind as opposed to the oneness of the sun. There's that clear distinction between the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think even in the symbolism of the sun and the circle with the dot in the middle versus the moon, which is that two circles, the duality, the dyad, I think it's called. But I think that heart field would be, for that reason, more reflective of your own Rahu in Leo, I think. And I think that's why you have such an affinity and draw to that the heart field and the hand on the heart even. Because
Oh
if
yeah,
that were the
that
case, it's your
yeah,
third house, which is literally the hands.
pasta.
The third house, the hand, but your
Yeah,
hand
yeah,
on the heart, that hand, the Rahu in Leo, the hand on the heart.
yeah. All these things, whatever I say, symbols, experiences that I'm having, it's all comes spontaneously from within, you know. And whenever I see somebody else is using the same symbols, I go, "Oh wow, yes, that's amazing." It's my being, and it's not somebody else at all. It's just that's the way it is for me, and it's also very, for me, very playful. A lot of entertainment in finding even the blips, you know. It's entertaining, and of course we're here to make everything into a feast, everything into a garden, everything into playing and enjoy and pleasure. This is our yogic flowers, you know. And so anything that we recoil, or the mind or the body recoils from, we have to allow it to come into consciousness, feel the desire. And of course, desire always means it's yours. It's not something you are reaching out for, which is what the common in 3D land understanding of desire. It's something I haven't got, so I want it. But it's not that at all. It's already yours. If it comes into your mind or your heart or your body or whatever it is, some, oh, wow, it's been really lovely. It's already yours. It's already exists. Mine says, no, you've got to work hard for this. You've got to wait, you know? But it's Cinderella is going to the ball in every moment, you know?
I just love this. I love this imagery, and I want to talk more about desire because because I read something recently about that, and it was a whole thing about free will, and I want to read you something actually by a philosopher, Bernardo Kastrup. It was really really well put. I want to read it out to you. But
Yes,
going back
yes.
to, first of all, Leo, and it literally being about entertainment. That's what the sign represents.
It's our theatre, it's our lila. And the mind on its own, without rooting in the heart field, is gets very serious. And it thinks, oh, I got to work hard to get through this. And that's not true. The lighter it is, the easier. Anyway, yeah.
I want to read. Can I read you? This is
Yes,
the
please,
philosopher,
please. Yes.
um, Bernardo Kastrup. So I'll
Yeah.
just read you what he explains in one of his YouTube videos. He's talking about
He's good, isn't he? Yes.
analytical idealism on free will. Yeah, he's very articulate about these kinds of things. But I just thought this quote is just perfect for what you're describing in his own words. So here's what he says: if you identify with the ego, you have very little free will. However, if you identify with core subjectivity, he's calling it, then by definition, you have absolute free will because core subjectivity is the lake where existence ripples. And so he goes on, there's
Lovely.
no
Yes.
difference between free will and determinism at the cosmic level because at the level of core subjectivity, the desire is the need. The need
Yes.
to do
Yes.
something is the same as the desire to do it. Free will is a philosophical red herring. My free choices are still determined. They're just determined by me.
But that thing about free will and needs is all really about identity. When you identify with that which is beyond limitation, beyond the full spectrum self, if you like, all the way from the unmanifest, the movement to come to create in form, and all the way right down to the toenails, if you like, in a little body that apparently is a little separate thing, a little jewel of flesh and blood, little rainbow, and then you have it all. It's free will. Well, when you're full spectrum, it's you have to say, first of all, where is your identity placed? Where is your tension placed when you were talking about free will? Limitation and free will exist, and they are apparently opposites, but they are simply points on a spectrum. And it's everyone, when they start talking about opposites, in the terms of full spectrum consciousness, it's yes and yes and yes and yes. Even, every single opposite is the same. There's only, as my being taught about 50 years ago, 40 years, that wherever you look, it was so sweet at the beginning when I was on this, treating me like a little child and said, wherever you look, you can only see one thing. There's only one thing to look at. Not even a thing, an object, but there's only one. And when you look and you look and you look, then you end up with knowing that, well, there's only me. Whatever me is, whether it's the fullness or the nothing,
It's just
can't be spoken about, really. We're doing a miracle trying to talk about it.
trying to speak about of these things, because more and more I'm getting a sense of what you're talking about. I mean, I have had this sense for some time, but it's just becoming more and more. It's just settling in me more and more.
Yes.
This sense of oneness before was like a concept, a mental construct in my mind.
Exactly. Yes.
You know what I mean? But I get it now as a reality.
I was talking about full spectrum the other day to Vanessa. It's a bit a complicated word to use. I mean, I talk it over with her sometimes to see what people who are not living in that awareness, how to explain, how to say it. It's too, I also think, not using Latin words, like full spectrum. But we all know what a thermometer, I mean, theoretically, you could go all the way down after the end of the thermometer, the bit that you're looking at ends, and you go on into infinity. And in the end, well, we don't know. But the loop, what I see when I look at it in my body, I see the loop completing all the time, like the heartbeat, and then it expresses the impulse to flow into form, the impulse. It creates a heart and a heartbeat. But also at the moment the little heartbeat starts, little fingers, little extensions, little pseudopodia of the fingers, the arms start to appear that very moment in the fetus. So you actually extend that hand and put it back here. You're completing a loop.
That image is so powerful when you think about Rahu in Leo, especially if we're in the third house in someone's chart like you, that you tap into that so quickly. And well, maybe not quickly in terms of your lifespan, but right now, I mean, quickly.
You can't do it. It's all at once. But in order to eat a meal, you begin with one little tiny thing at a time, and you explore. And what the secret is, Gary, is to not think, it's just this bit and this bit. But wherever you look, whatever point on the spectrum, you're only looking at one. Not one thing, because it's not an object, but you're only seeing and experiencing the one, because there isn't anything else. So when we look at something that might be judged to be negative or not wanted, not desired, like any Rahu moment, like you cut your finger or whatever, I see any little interruption, I call it a Rahu moment, and it cannot be other than love. It can't be like a mother, like a lioness, cuffing her cubs and making sure they didn't, I don't know, fall down that mud hole or whatever it was she's protecting them from. So Ra is the protector. He's the most loving of guides. And it's only when we tighten up and we take the mind takes the root, pulls the root out of the heart, out of recognizing it as love, that we get into these contracted difficulties over it. I know that we energize, mind energizes separation, alienation, when it removes its root from the heart. So when you look at Rahu and you judge it to be anything else except the one in all one of its forms, words, when they're understood with the mind, just don't work. I mean, for me anyway. But when you feel them, the taste in the mouth and the shape and the love, when you take love and put your hand on your heart and say it over and over again, it acquires the vibration with which, the ultimate vibration. And then eventually the word, the sound is all there is. It's only the sound.
I just think for people listening, this is so powerful because, you know, all of these conversations we're having about Rahu, if we get down to it, really, what is Rahu anyway? You know, astrologically, we could talk about the eclipse, we could talk about the sun and the moon, because obviously there's no Rahu without the sun and moon. You know, that's how eclipses are formed, right? So it's like, from another point of view, it's like this sense of this kind of, again, full spectrum, but also this returning, like, and you know, that image as well of returning, the Ouroboros state, you know.
Yeah, back to the, yes.
So powerful in terms of the imagery, but it's like, if only, I mean, everybody has obviously their own language and their own way of.
Because everybody's an ultimately unique fingerprint, if you like, of the one. But ultimately, as you go back and back up the river to the source, all the little tributaries become one. All the little riverbeds start to melt into, well, that one little spring that comes, or that rushing waterfall down the mountain, or whatever. There's only that one, and then it ends up again in the ocean. So it's this being as tempting or intending or feeling to see and experience and taste itself in our 3D form, in our lila, because it loves it all. And the sun shines indifferently on absolutely everything. So it gets to a little log jam. It doesn't go, no, you shouldn't be there. It goes, oh, how sweet, playing in the sun.
It's just fascinating now if you get into the symbolism and the imagery of that kind of the sun, because the sun could be, you know, like the perfect sunny day, the perfect summer day, English day, but then it could also be this intense glaring heat in the desert, right? Or it could be a completely obscured by clouds or an eclipse, where you have all of these different dimensions of light and being, you know, and like you say, you're being split, but then, you know, coming back again.
Different points on the spectrum. I will say that the image I use of being in that state of preparedness, readiness, feeling, I say sunny inner weather. But like it, and I will say advisedly, for me, I see it like a perfect English summer day. Little baby wispy clouds floating, lying in a cornfield, relaxed and enjoying perfect temperature, not too hot, not too cold. And as Rahu says, sit rather in the middle of the house. Don't go one to one end or the other as you tip over the boat. Sit in the middle and rest. You know?
It's it's so natural. Like when you think about the image of the lioness with her cubs, it's so natural for them to shade under a tree at the, you know, the heat of the day. Midday, right? It's like, it's just natural, it's inbuilt, but also within us as well. It's this, if we talk about Rahu and the sun and this extremes that it can bring us to in a way, but it's all of a piece, as you say. It always brings us back anyway. But I'm just thinking about that again, that sense of self and what is the self, and all the many colorings and shadings of the self that we can experience. Like all the roles that we play, if we just talk about it in that simple way, all the roles that we play, the masks that we wear to live life, you know, it's an interesting dynamic, I think, with the Sun Rahu quality, because I think astrologically it would be said to be something like, you know, a great sense of self, or even a distortion of that sense of self, like a promotion of the self. You know, somebody who's very successful and becomes famous, for example, a celebrity, where they have like this sense of a celebrity self that's not really themselves. People see them as
it's an expression. It's one expression, you know, and we have all the different things. We're here to choose, and every wave, even though they look from, you know, standing on the cliff top. I remember standing on the cliff top in Barkala once, watching the tide turning and the waves. They all look so the same, but they're absolutely unique. Every little wave that rises is totally different, and it will go on like that into infinity, you know. I remember, as I'm saying the word infinity, I'm remembering again that sense of being a child looking out at the and asking my mum about it. And she said, no, it doesn't end. And I said, what's that? My little child mind trying to understand something that didn't have, I was only little. I remember that long conversation and arranging the stair rods to roll a marble so that she said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm making a track that will make the marbles roll on forever. And she said, you won't do that. That's an infinity machine. You can't make that because it's not possible. And I said, oh, Mum, I can see it. How is it? I can see it. It must be there because I can imagine it. I mean, that must have, when I was about 8, I suppose, 7 or 8, doing that. It was started at the beginning.
It's so interesting how you're talking about this now as well, because that's the other big side of Leo, is it represents children. So there's this, like, innocence and playfulness, obviously, of children. That's an obvious expression of Leo, the fun and entertainment and all that side of it. But then there's also the more, this sense of it, when we're young, the potentials are just expanding all the time. It's like anything is possible. And then as we get older, we might say that, the Saturn creeps in more and more, because Saturn and the sun are absolutely opposite. In myth, this Saturn is the son of the sun, born of the wife Chaya, the shadow. So the sun and Chaya had a wife or had a child, and it was Saturn. So it's like Saturn is like the, even getting older represents old age. It's like we restrict ourselves in our mind. We think now only this is possible. Oh, now we're going to have to actually get serious now, quote unquote, and grow up, right? Whereas when we're children, it's like anything is possible.
But we come back, if we follow the normal or the expected default of what happens in a human life, we come back to that state of simplicity, innocence, and you have to come back to the beginning. And it's only when you believe in time as being an absolute, a given. Time is not a given, as the physicists have found out. It's not a given. It's an experience. It's only in time that we have entropy.
I love the phrase that philosopher uses, core subjectivity. For some reason that resonates with me. I don't know why. It just kind of explains it very well, like core subjectivity. But whatever you want to call it, soul, whatever, I think, yeah, it's like playing off those two seemingly opposing qualities of the infinite and the finite, the sun, the Saturn.
It has to include it all. You cannot alienate, you cannot separate. You cannot do anything ultimately which separates you from what you already are before entering space-time. This is an experience. So it's only one to know. I don't like to use that one thing, because it's not a thing, but there's only, we don't have the words. There's only oneness, if you like, to experience.
Oneness is a bit of a word for me as well that I trip on, because I actually know somebody who's doing a PhD, believe it or not, in oneness, but like as a lived experience. So he interviews a lot of people in terms of what is oneness to you, and comes up, groups of people like come together and come up with phrases that you could apply to what is the experience of oneness.
How interesting.
But it's so at the same time, because it's a PhD, it's academic, and it's so hard to actually wrap your head around some of the statements, like when they read them out and you're like, do you agree with this statement? I joined one of the group, one of the groups once, but it was like, so sometimes my mind was trying to grapple with the statements.
Poor mind, because it sometimes when you want to engage with something, if you like, you only get such a tiny little segment of it if you look at it only with the mind in separation. That's why the apparently scientific work, that thing doesn't work. I mean, you get something like the double slit experiment and all of that, then they realize that they don't know what they're doing, really, somehow, because it all leads to the opposite. Whatever you say, it's not that, it's not that, it's not that. And they come back to the ancient saying, sage is saying, neti, net, not this, not this. Oh, not that.
Well, maybe that nitty nitty, that's the best expression in a way we could say for some people, maybe for Rahu and Leo, that no, it's not this, it's not this.
But it also is the fullness. Whatever you look at, every little thing is a fractal of the whole of that, like when you really try to look at it, the mind fails. The mind falls into, oh wow, how can I, like the alchemists say, in the end we'll burn the books. I tell you what, I've got so many books I've thrown away or given away. I mean, not thrown away, but so many thousands. And I still have 2 or 3 big bookcases full of my favorites, which I suppose I'll hang on to, like my half the collected works of Jung, not all of it. I stopped after a while collecting them. But you can't get it because the mind and the body itself, you see, the body, when you come to the body, what I'm talking about later today, Rahu embodied, is that it's the body is archaeology, a lot of it, not as it flows into the freedom, the movement, let's say, of a baby or a child that doesn't have a to-do list and doesn't think, well, I better have half an hour in the sandpit and I better, make sure I've got tick, tick on the to-do list. And you can't somehow, well, you just can't see it that way. You can't use a scientific approach without it becoming through a living, breathing human. And you can't separate the mind totally from that living, breathing human. And so all of the undigested experiences, beliefs, and emotional states, they just have to be put in cold storage because you get to the end and you can't go any further, or it dissolves into a new theory or a new, because they're looking to find bits to fit it together to make it work. And it's lovely if you get somebody like say a Bernardo Castro or some, who you can see what a beautiful man he is, as well as all the thinking and analyzing, but he's beautiful. What did I see once the other day? It was with Rupert Spira. I think he was talking to Rupert Spira. It was lovely to see them together because you see the love flowing through between them as well. You can't just be a scientist once it's through a human being, which is probably one of those old dictums that the value of a human birth. They talk about the absolute preciousness, the gift of being human.
Well, I want to just say, like, whatever about Bernardo Kastrup and his way of articulating what obviously is a lived experience, from the heart field. Likewise, yes, for yourself, who lives it, and you can sense that as soon as you start to speak. But it just so happens that you're also very articulate, and that's very rare. It's very rare to have somebody who actually is articulate but not stuck up in their head.
Yes, yes.
And that's powerful, because when you read somebody like that, or like you, it's like everyone senses that, even if somebody doesn't even know what the words actually mean. When you read it, it's sensed. It's a lived experience, and that's really rare. That's a rarity. Yes. That's like a fine gem.
Well, from within me, it feels very ordinary.
It's rare but ordinary.
Yeah, very ordinary. And nothing. Yeah, not. I remember once many years ago there was somebody facilitating when I was training in humanistic psychology, and he said, "You have the gift of making something, everything extraordinary." He said, "But can you make it all ordinary? Can you make the extraordinary ordinary?" And I said, "Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm living it, and it's just an ordinary human being with all of what you might, if you're going to mind all the faults and feelings." Maybe the perfectionism of my mum from when I remember, this isn't right and that isn't right. And yet, in the end, you come to laughter about it rather than a hugging of an old unacceptableness from childhood. You just laugh. When I realized the realization of who my mother or what my mother is, my human mother and my father and everybody else, and even you know, I fell in love again with my ex-husband, and he's got dementia now. But I knew my daughter said, "Oh, you won't be able to connect with him." I knew I could, and he did remember things like sitting singing outside a pub, "You Are My Sunshine." And you think it's just so nothing to do with astrology or spirituality, but it was so just. And then the couple sitting at the table over there said, "Wasn't it nice still together after all these years?" And my son looks at him and said, "They haven't spoken to each other for 42 years and more." So, but it was delightful because he's got dementia. He doesn't remember. He just remembers. I gave him a picture, my one of my little pictures from my work, and the postcard. And next day he tells my daughter, "Who is this beautiful woman? Who is she? Is she my mother? Is she my lover? What's she doing here in my pocket?" Because he didn't remember how he'd got it. Mm. It was such a perfect moment of completion. Singing "You Are My Sunshine," because he remembers, of course, people with dementia do. But I know that I can connect with an animal, with a disembodied being, doesn't have a body, because it's all in the heart field. It's all, nothing is ever lost, nothing is ever dead that you've loved. And if you give it attention, that's love. Giving it attention, it's giving it life. And that's what the self is, what I see the self as.
Yeah, that's such, for me, that's just like hit home. For some reason, sometimes I've heard those words out of your mouth before, but for some reason, those words in that sequence really hit home. That sense of what you give attention to, what you love, that is.
And what you give attention to, that you become. I was talking to a particular group the other day about being and becoming. Being, you always is what you are, your essence, and becoming is what we are engaged in. So it's being and becoming are two modes of describing, and it doesn't really matter whether you can tie your shoelaces or do a PhD. What's the difference?
Being and becoming. I mean, this is wow. I mean, I'm thinking about, again, obviously Leo, and I'm thinking about your ex-husband, you, me, everybody as individual beings, as the sparks from the sun, as the one returning to the sun, right?
And when you get beings together, especially when they're connecting at the heart field, even if they're not aware of it, they're still in the heart field. There's nowhere else to be. When I call the heart field is everything, because it has that quality of expression, of pouring, love pouring. But you can't ever be out of that heart field. You always are. What my being said to me once, said, "But you're the little song that the divine child is singing to herself, always at home in the heart." That was the bungee jumping, when I was much less articulate about it. Bungee jumping is a perfect description.
It's perfect. And actually, I explained it to somebody recently who was explaining the same thing, but in their own words. And I just mentioned that Kishori speaks of it as bungee jumping, and it really resonated with her.
Yes.
She really got it. It's like, okay, actually that's really on point.
Yeah. I didn't, when I said, "Well, what am I doing here?" That was about 40, 50 years. I don't know how long time ago. And it said, "You're bungee jumping." Oh, yeah. And you are the little song that the divine child is singing to herself or himself, always at home in the heart.
I just love the fact that, the song he was singing, your ex-husband, was "You Are My Sunshine." I mean,
we both sang it together, yes.
You both sang it together. I mean, this is fascinating when you see dementia, people with dementia, as soon as they're played a piece of music, their eyes light up, their face lights up, if they were, not there before, right?
And I told my daughter, I didn't argue too much, but I'll be okay. I'll be able to communicate with him. They'd arranged it, this meeting. My son came from India. My daughter was there doing all the she was Martha, organizing everything, getting everybody together. And then my son and my daughter and my ex, and I'd been married after that. He asked me, he said, "Did you marry again?" Because he got some of it. And he said, "You and me married?" And he said, "That's my daughter." That I said, "She's mine too." And his eyes kind of trying to puzzle it out. And then, "You and me in bed together?" "Yes, yes." and we started to laugh, and he's going, "Oh, wow."
Wow.
So sweet. So we had an amazing, amazing time. How can you say you spend a couple of hours with a person with dementia? And we smiled and laughed. And he asked me 5,000 times, well, no, an exaggeration, dozens of times. "And where do you live? Where do you come from? And how long were we married?" When I was, it's so beautiful. Yeah. A very sacred experience, if you like. Very sacred. Everybody's always present because it's the question of identity. But the mind is sometimes not present. It's not a person that's not present. Persons are always there.
Like you say, the identity, where is your identity placed?
Yes. Yes. That desire to learn different languages and to always, I can speak something after a very short time, enough to manage and to get the feeling of the words in my mouth, the taste, the shape, the sense, the frequency. And I love it. And astrology is one beautiful, beautiful language.
But like you said before, that, you were told this many years ago, that it's not in all the scriptures, it's not in all the books. You don't need to have read, like you say, Rahu, even you think about Rahu, how the symbolism and the mythological story of how Rahu's formed. I mean, it was a demon that slipped into the royal banquet to drink Amrit to become immortal.
Yes.
He wanted it so bad, the immortality, that he deceived everybody to get it. And then he had a price to pay for getting. He had his head cut off, right? So this sense of Rahu being a head with no body to satiate, that all of that knowledge, all of those books.
Exactly.
But what is it without really fully absorbing it?
A great sacrifice to become the shadow. To become really what the humanity might say is evil, or to take on that shadow, that neti state. It's a laugh, So
what strikes me at the moment is how much love there is in the world in this seemingly hateful place.
Yes. Can be heaven or hell. That's what what's his name, the third Zen patriarch in The Great Way, Zen thing. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set forever apart. You can be in heaven or hell within a moment. Within a second, you can shift. And that is our choice. You get really skilled at playing this lila, this game, on purpose. And you really see the laughter in it. You can flip immediately from a terrifying situation into laughter. And it isn't only a mental thing, it affects matter. This is how they turn water into wine, so to speak. That is how miracles, you shift the tiniest little perception, tiniest little thing, and it's dancing on the razor's edge. And you can slip one way or the other, or we slip right up the middle if you don't stop dancing. But Rahu is the Atiti par excellence. You can say what Atiti is there, because most people won't know what Atiti is.
Aditi, yeah, I guess Aditi is like the Sanskrit for division. So before a word means the opposite. So it's the infinite.
Outside time is, I see, Atiti is like a segment of time, right. And the is not. So not in time. And the Atiti, I always see it as being the leper or the beggar at the feast. And he's still identified with, that's what Jesus is talking about. Where's your wedding garment? Come to the feast. Where's your wedding garment? And it's just that shift in identity. what you decide you are, what you choose to be, that you are right now. So if you want any state or any desire comes and you just, oh, yes, I tell everybody, when you get a little thought, feeling that you would like that, just go, oh, yes, thank you. And it's yours. And actually, that's how you turn water into wine. That's how you find water in the desert. That's how you turn every situation that seems to be the end of the world for you into the opposite, by allowing people to talk about let go. And they go, what? I'm letting go. What is let go? Some of these instructions that we get when your mind is a bit, it needs to learn to play a bit. And what does let go mean, for goodness sake? I'm letting go. Allow. What is the secret to living here on purpose, in abundance, and fulfilling the blossoming of the yogic flowers, dharma, artha, kama, and moksha? Your purpose, your wealth, if you like, all the good things, the pleasure, the kama, and then the moksha, the liberation, the freedom. We are not limited by any of the forms that we take on. We are not limited by the apparent archaeology of the body. And when you sit playing heart communication, it's one of the games that I play. Tell me what you really want. I won't go into it now, but it's one of the things that I set up in groups. And tell me what you really want. And you look very carefully into the face of that person. They transfigure and they become radiant. And you literally see. It's only a flash at times, but ultimately, this is when we look at saints with what we call saints anyway, with their aura and their nimbus around their head. When you take it outside time, that is the permanent, whatever a permanent state is, I don't know. But I ran out of words. I don't know how to describe, because every time I say is about something, which is obviously not an is, it's an experience. I drop, my words drop.
Right.
Because it's not, and it laughs at this huge, rolling, thunderous laughter. That's what you're doing, Jeanette. What you're saying is about experience. And every time anyone argues or says that's obviously not true, everything is true to a certain extent. It depends on where your attention is. Everything.
Yeah. I'm reading another book. I always have several books on the go at once, in true Rahu style. And it's about, it's called The Expectation Effect, which is a fascinating book.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's all actually a lot about scientific studies, that like even lab-based studies that are done on the expectation effect and how it impacts the result. So it's like examples like people taking a placebo, even when they know it's a placebo, and having an effect.
And that's why when people say affirmations are no good and not, it's you declare I am. Anything you say, the little neural pathways and the little cells or whatever it is, they hear it. You only got to say it once with the intention that even that is not your experience. If you say it is, then so it is. As you see it, so it is.
It strikes me that, because you said earlier about, the being and becoming, that there's this sense of, I'm reminded of that image, of they have the image of Surya on the charioteer in the front and reining in the horses. So it's like the mind in a way kind of reining in the horses, the senses, but then Surya in the back, the huge Surya is running the show. It's like that's the being, whatever about what we're becoming and what we're doing and how things are flowing or not. It's like we always have that sense of being. I was yesterday, last couple of days, I was in Dublin because, as you know, we're moving to Dublin, right? And so I'm having to kind of readjust to a city and city life. And for me, cities, the advantage for me of that is coming from quiet countryside where everything is peaceful and everything. Going to a city, it flips on a dime. And that's why I was playing with it. I was literally walking around the streets, and at one point I would turn one straight and be like, "Oh, I don't know about this," and then I'm like, "Okay, let me get into a better state of mind here because let me see something else I want to see." Turn another corner, and then I went into this lovely place. I went to a Buddhist place, and I had a lovely chat with somebody there. And then I turned another corner, and then I went to a dance place, and it's like having a lovely chat with someone there. And it's like it's all open to you. It's like it's all there.
It's all the carousel.
Mm.
And you are the keeper of the carousel. Not just Kishori, but
Mm-hmm.
everyone is. Everyone is everything.
Yeah.
They choose to be. And as you see it, so it shall be. And a city, I feel is just, you can be in the countryside and in total chaos. And you can be in the city in total peace. And it's just, you're the master. You're the source. You're the master of it all.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's just that in a city, sometimes I feel like, because in the country, you can be in chaos, but it's like the city gives you a sort of almost direct feedback loop as to what state you're in because you meet people and you meet a lot of different experiences. Where in nature, it's kind of like you're just seeing nature and your inner mind in a way, or your inner landscape, right? Reflected in what's going on. But it's like looking at a rainy day and you're blissed out, as opposed to a sunny day, whatever it is. But in a city, it's like it's so easy to get then enveloped in the actual experiences you're having with people and in a way get lost as well. Right. And so that's been my challenge in a way with other people is that again, remaining like being in with other beings, having this experience and all of these experiences that are changing constantly. You turn a corner and it's a different scene. It's a different kind of energy. Do you know what I mean?
I do, yes, totally. I keep as you were saying, you had a little expression on your face as you said the country, this, and I got the flash of this. I think it's Thomas Ahern, one of the early English mystics in William James' Varieties of Religious Experience. I read the story, and he's walking along, and he looks at this pile of dog shit, and all of a sudden he's transported, and he sees it's at a pile of diamonds, and it's like wow, you can look at a cowpat and
It's all the one.
all in the perception and
Mm.
the choice. And human beings have got this great gift of the huge gift of the imagination. And people dismiss imagination. Oh, it's just imagination. But imagination is what is God, is the ultimate source to give form to that which doesn't have form. It's what the self does. It's moving all the time to do that, but then the next wave it disassembles it and goes with something else. So yeah, playing in the city, yes, your mind is the ocean as well. Just
It's all what I'm struck with more than anything, how even the things that we wouldn't label as fun, it starts to become fun. It's like you realize it's all a game. You realize you're just playing with it all.
it's the Eros Gamos, the divine love affair with itself, making itself into even that which is not. It wants to become shadow, but nothing's really happening. Not in the isness. In experience, yes, you get the experience, but the happening, what's really happening? How can what is ever be lost? Can't be. I wish we could I don't know, find some other way of speaking to somebody whose partner has died or they've you can't lose anything. There's not any possibility that once it's been experienced by the self who's loved it, and the self loves everything, even if human minds don't appreciate it. The self is love. It's like the wisdom of divine indifference, like what to write there, Alan Watts. Divine indifference. I mean, it's not a word you might use of the divine, of the sun, but the sun is indifferent. And it's, if, like the great way of saying it, you make the smallest difference, Doesn't mean at the human level you can't choose between, strawberry shortcake and chocolate mousse. Doesn't mean you hate chocolate mousse because you chose strawberry shortcake today. You can. Oh, there's nothing to say anymore, actually.
Nothing to say anymore, except for now I'm thinking about strawberry mousse.
Strawberry mousse. Oh yes, merging of the opposites. Change
Well,
the form and then not the taste.
yeah. Well, Kishori, I think it's again has always been a pleasure and fun and heartwarming and centering, and I appreciate you.
And I appreciate you, Gary. It's lovely to sit and play like this. Words are words are delicious, aren't they?
Mm,
Yes.
yeah.
I remember that poem I wrote. Oh, I'm publishing glimpses. Well, today.
Oh yes.
Although I
Later on
think it's
today.
only the ebook. But and I wrote words like it was a poem about Krishna, or I don't know, words like wild strawberries flowering from his fragrant mouth. Huh?
That's literally what I feel like sometimes after we've spoken. I feel like I've had like a buffet and all like of desserts.
They taste, they do. Words taste like something. They have a shape of a deliciousness.
Mm-mm. Can you
Mm.
tell, because people listening are going to be wondering now, what is that? What, and so if you want to tell them about your new book that's coming out today, by the way, we should say we're recording this on the solstice on the 21st of June.
We're recording on the solstice. And this afternoon, are you coming to the
I
Rahu
am
Book
coming,
Club?
absolutely. But for
I call
listeners
it the
who,
Rahu Book Club, really.
yeah, the Rahu Book Club. But for listeners who wouldn't know that you actually have other books coming out, can you tell them about your new book?
The new book. Okay. So
Glimpses of Treasure Island. Is that right?
Treasure Island, EYE.
EYE.
As you see it, it is treasure. So pile of dog shit becomes diamonds for Thomas Ahern. He must have been Irish, isn't he, with that name? I
That's an
must check.
Irish name.
I never can find referring to that experience. I don't know, it's got lost. Yes, the new book, Glimpses. I called it Little Flashes of Treasure Island. And it's got to be many, many years ago. Most of the poetry in there and stories are from some years ago, because I'm catching up with things that I never published because I didn't fully value my own experience. And that's what we all have to do. It's all jewels, it's all treasure. Anyway, so this is a selection of, I don't know, maybe 20 or more, and a few stories, and they've been gathered together, and they are strung a bit like the padas, for the Rahu book, and so the strawberries, words like wild strawberries flowering from his fragrant mouth. They are poems of embodiment, and I had a major experience, like blown to pieces, like we might call it kundalini. I don't know what it was. It was a major energy explosion in my body, and I didn't do anything except write poetry for a couple of years. It was like weird, like I became jelly. Years later, I understood it was an experience of being protoplasm. And so poems of embodiment, a lot of them start with I am, and it's like my holographic experience, because life is, I am a hologram. One of the most lovely ones is I am a hologram, a hologram, a hollow, a little empty cylinder, which when you consider it weighs nothing at all. I was playing with putting on a few pounds, and it said, I'm a hologram. Oh, so think differently, and you don't have to do anything else. So I've been playing with that. So yes, we put together with my lovely editor Vanessa. She's organizing, with some beautiful little drawings done by a beautiful young girl that I knew in those days. I've lost track. She was the artist, and I've got a little poem, a little song a drawing of what I call Kishori, a little girl dancing, tiny baby dancing with a nappy through the fields and the sun shining, and so lots and lots of little childlike drawings, very elegant though, and and poems which came to describe that state of being jelly. Nothing. I mean, didn't understand it, but it's like I couldn't sit even. I couldn't stand beside a fridge. I couldn't go on a boat because of the vibration. My body, what I thought was my body, I was just vibrating all the time. So although the poems are more joyful, it's still a Rahu experience because I was terrified. I did not know. The lightning in the sky was continuous with my body. And I didn't understand how I could be experiencing being the lightning, but terrified of being, spontaneously combusting at the same time. It was a very, very interesting experience when you look back. And I just, like there's a little reference in the Song of Rahu book about having a major explosion and scribbling on. There is a bit, and one of the padders describes that.
It just to me sounds much like what you talk about in terms of, you know, the fierceness as well. If you talk about the lioness with her cubs, it's like a lightning storm. It's like Rahu in Leo. It's like it's scary as hell, but it's like it's the power of it as well.
Yeah, the power is enormous, and it went on for years. In fact, my body is in that weird state still. I'm still integrating the damage, or not the damage, but the distortion. I'm playing with it, but I absolutely know that I'm engaged in living alchemy of returning to the simplicity prior to all of the distortions, the chaos, and I am very curious to see what I am becoming.
You know what? This is like perfect. I mean, Rahu and Leo, I don't think you can come up with a better phrase and a two-word phrase for Rahu in Leo. I am.
Yes. These are the I am poems, yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's amazing. So I look forward to that later on. And if people wanted to find the book, how would they go about that?
Well, I think it might be a few days before it's actually out there.
But I'm sure by the time this is released as a podcast.
Oh yes, it'll be available certainly as an ebook, because I know Vanessa's going away on the beginning of July, so it's got to be within the next week that an ebook. I don't know whether the printed version, because I'm in the middle of rewriting the intro, and I'm not really finished. Well, I'm never finished with anything really. So Vanessa will just say, right, that's it. Press the button. But if it's an ebook, I could change it.
That is a positive thing about ebooks, is that you can continually
you can update it, and people can always. Well, I don't know. I don't know the system how you do it, but certainly you get the next upgrade or whatever it is. So it might only be done as an ebook until I'm settled enough to be able to fix. It's like, for me, at the beginning, I could never publish Rahu. I couldn't, because it'd be like sticking a pin through a butterfly, a living butterfly, not a dead one, but a living one. But I've kind of accepted these days that I've got to. That's why I bought a house in the end. I never wanted to settle. I couldn't settle.
It's interesting because my own Rahu book has that kind of sense of I've been always trying to pin the butterfly down. You know, that's really my journey of Rahu. It's like I've been pinning it down the whole time, and I have felt like it hasn't allowed it full expression in many ways, because maybe I was frightened. Maybe I was frightened to allow it to go completely the way it wanted to go naturally. But the other side of that is, I guess, is that I've written a book about Rahu where it's very kind of practical and down to earth, and it's like almost like a just how to manual. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I will be sending it to you very soon. I'd say the next couple of weeks. I'm just waiting for the book, the box to come from Germany. But yeah, you'll get it soon. But I look forward to that later on, and I'm sure people will be able to get that as well. So again, what's the title again of your new book?
Glimpses
of Treasure Island.
Because they're little flashes And that somehow is that union of the opposites. A flash, it can't be permanent. I mean, you anyway, it's a little pile of glimpses, like the padders. The padders in the song are only little moments. Kishori's bit of the song, if you like.
Mm.
In the Rahu as well, it's always forming and reforming and like the waves. But glimpses of Treasure Island, EYE, as you see it, so it is. And I'm going to read a couple of them this afternoon of
Oh,
the
cool.
Iron poems.
I look forward to that. As always, Kishori, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this podcast all the way through to the end. As Kishori mentioned there, her new book, Glimpses of Treasure Island, will be out soon. She mentioned there that it was imminent, but it has been delayed. You know, she'll release it when the time is right. It probably will be into 2024. And I think that's something to look forward to. And in the meantime, don't forget that we have another podcast coming up. That's Rahu in Cancer, the more emotive, more sensitive, more protective sign Cancer, and what that might mean in relation to Rahu's presence here. So look out for that. Rahu in Cancer is coming up next, and then we'll be wrapping it up in the next few weeks, really, into the new year with Rahu in Gemini, followed by Rahu in Taurus. And that will be our last Rahu through the signs. But don't worry, because if you would still like more from Kishori, we are planning on some new material in 2024. Some really exciting material where we delve into the lunar mansions or nakshatras of Vedic astrology. And in that respect, Rahu will cast a whole new light on the lunar mansions. So if you've enjoyed this series, please let us know. Please get involved in some way. Please join the conversation, either contacting us individually. You can contact Kishori at magicmakeover.com. That's magic with a K, MAGICK -makeover.com. Or you can go to kishori.net, KISHORI.net. I am at timelineastrology.com. Or you can reach me at patreon.com/timelineastrology. Or just share your comments, your views, wherever this is posted. And again, I hope you can join us for the latter part of this journey through the signs with Rahu. And until next time.